Hello, this is a special update from Councilman Michael Wojak talking about crime. Joe Powers has organized a meeting at the International Event Center tonight, December 1st, 2009. I intend to be there. I hope it's a productive meeting. I hope we get mobilized some people to be involved after this. Not just for this, but we need engaged citizens for a number of different items. I appreciate Joe taking the leadership on this. If I gave a thank you to Joe every time he did one of these things good for the community, I'd run out of storage space on YouTube. Let's talk about some realities here. I'm going to start out giving you some of the hard realities. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I want to give you both sides of the issue and then share what I think we need to be focusing on. First and foremost is that we face some enormous financial issues in the city, in large part because Tim Pawlenty cut the effective equivalent of 30 police officers worth of funding to the city of Rochester in the 2010 budget. That said, we our budget is essentially flat year over year. That means that there's more in property taxes, but you can see the challenge we have in adding public safety in that kind of environment. And the reality is 2011 and 2012 are probably going to be just as bad. I'm not originally from Rochester. I moved here. Rochester still to this day has a reputation of being a very low crime city. I know the people in Rochester don't necessarily feel that way. Statistics are damning sometimes, but I do want to make one thing, one thing that maybe people don't always realize, and that is that your chances of being the victim of a violent crime today are some 20% less than they were back in the 90s when we were consistently named the best city to live in America. Now, I know that there are pockets of concern that we have, and I share some of these concerns, but I always want to keep some perspective that any talk of runaway rampant crime is not necessarily reflected. I want to keep that. I do want to keep that in mind. I also wanted to point out that since I've been elected, particularly, I'm a little bit of an insomniac sometimes, and I tend to walk through a lot of our neighborhoods at night, sometimes late at night, sometimes midnight or so. Particularly my neighborhoods in the core, Kutsky Park, Falwell, the historic Southwest. When I go through looking for dark spots, talk to people who might be out and about, we tend to have our own little insomniacs club. It appears from time to time, and I'll be quite honest. I don't feel in danger when I'm walking around our streets. I talk to a lot of people that are, and I think it's a perception issue, but it's something that we have to address. There are certain neighborhoods that do have higher crime rates, and that in particular is what concerns me the most, because we can't allow new areas to be built that will devolve into ghettos, and we can't allow neighborhoods to fall into disrepair where people don't want to move there. And I think that's what we're seeing in Cimarron Court right now. Talk to a realtor trying to sell a home in some of the poor areas of Cimarron Court, and you'll see the kind of issues that we face. I also want to point out there was a lot of federal stimulus money out there for officers, and we applied for that money just like every other community in Minnesota. And the reality is we didn't get a sniff of getting an officer, and that's because our crime rate relative to the rest of the state is so low. Places like St. Paul, where we got 20 officers, and with all these LGA cuts that are going on, cities like Minneapolis are looking at cutting officers. We've been very fortunate that we haven't had to do that. There are a few officers I would specifically like to see hired for neighborhood purposes, but that's difficult to do in this climate. And I would point out that we need some partnership on this. We need the community pressuring groups, whether it be the Chamber of Commerce, who already thinks that keeping our budget flat, we're being pressured to try and lower the property tax levy increases, which are just keeping our budget flat. And we need to talk to those groups and say that public safety is important, and if we're going to have more officers, we need to realize that that's going to come out of the property tax levy. Then we're going to need partnership from the police department. We had an officer come before us yesterday and say that he didn't feel safe out there, and I think that's unfortunate. But I asked some questions too. Our officers are responding to sometimes domestic assault calls without backup, and that really does concern me. I do see that as a situation that has potential to escalate, and I'm not comfortable with that myself. At the same time, we're in negotiations. The city administration informed me today that in negotiations, the representatives for the officers union came forward and said that they do not want to replace the police cars that are scheduled to be replaced, or hire the officers that have the spots that are open if it's going to prevent them from getting pay increases. If we're going to work on this in this kind of financial climate, we're going to have to, everyone's going to have to make sacrifices, and that means that maybe the police department's going to have to take some wage freezes like is happening all over the state. I apologize from the standpoint that it's not your fault, and it's not it doesn't speak to the fact that you're not doing a great job, because you are. But that is the climate that we're in, and every other city and every other department in this city is making similar sacrifices. And in order to get where we need to be, the police officers themselves are going to have to be a part of that. And that means you need to talk to your representatives, because if you think that that's a reasonable statement, you need to make sure that your representatives in the negotiations are sharing that viewpoint with you. I want to talk a little bit about amenities. One thing that Chief Peterson said, and I strongly agree with, is the amenities that we have in our community are fundamental to keeping kids doing things that are not crime. I absolutely believe in a strong public park system. I think our rec center is wonderful. I think some groups that we partner with, like the Boys and Girls Club, do a wonderful job, and I was absolutely disheartened to learn that they're having to shut down their Gage facility, or they will have shut down the Gage facility because of their own funding situation. I think that's incredibly disappointing. Our public arts are very important as well, and the libraries are very important. These are things that give healthy alternatives for kids to be doing, and I think that's a big part of what we have to do. And I share the belief with Chief Peterson and a lot of published research around the country that says that these alternatives are very important to keeping crime rates low. That said, I share some of your concerns, particularly with neighborhoods. We have certain places, whether it be Cimarron Court, certain parts of East Side, that certain criminal elements have kind of overrun. And that's unfortunate. There's human nature that if you have 20 different police officers talking with somebody for the first time, they're treating like this is the first time there's been an issue. It's human nature to say, okay, if I come back and talk to this person a second time, I'm going to have to be more tough. Well, the problem is you have so many different officers talking to this person that it's not really getting taken care of. And that's just human nature. And we need to take some of these problem areas and have dedicated officers in the neighborhoods. That's something I'm absolutely passionate about. I want to see the COPS program restart in a limited capacity, because quite frankly, that's all we're going to be able to afford to do for many more years. But some of these areas that really need the help, we need to get the help there. But we cannot ignore the underlying issues that we face. First and foremost, for God's sake, we have got to make sure that we don't develop any more ghettos. Let's take a look at what happened in Cimarron Court. We had a ghetto developer come in. We had a city council with a weak spine, and this well-connected developer was able to put through some horribly designed, poor quality homes. And you know what? They devolved into ghetto status just like you would expect they would. We have got to stop that. Quality standards for our existing and future neighborhoods are absolute necessity. In some of our core neighborhoods, there are so many slumlord-owned properties. Sure, we have a building code, we have a housing code, but we don't have an aesthetics code. That thing can look just about as ugly as you want, and it attracts crime. The only people that are going to rent there are the criminals, because they can get away with it. They aren't doing background checks on this. We have got to make sure that we not only attack the ghetto developers and the slumlords, but we need to put them out of business. We have to destroy their business model. We have to not play nice. The system has been set up to benefit these people for too long. And you need to make yourself heard. You need to talk to the city council. You need to be talking to people and shut these people down. It is absolutely unacceptable that a developer could get away with building the Cimarron Court duplexes. It is completely unacceptable that you'd have a torn apart building in the core of our city, attracting criminal elements, and there's nothing that we can do to stop it. This has been my passion, shutting down the slumlords, and I'm going to continue to fight that. It's also about priorities. Now, we have a city budget that really I can defend greatly, but there are some things that just absolutely disgust me. At the public meeting, and I hope you're all coming to the City Council meeting on December 7th and making yourself heard, we're going to be talking about basically giving a $1.5 million subsidy or something like that for a Skyway for Joe Weiss. It's an ill-conceived thing. It just disgusts me that we'd be doing a subsidy to a private developer on the order of $1.5 million with abatement dollars that could be better used in making sure that the Boys and Girls Club or the Senior Center or other amenities that keep our downtown vibrant. We're not doing this. Instead, we're just giving a gift out, and that absolutely disgusts me. I think it's the wrong priority. This is an opportunity where we can use those dollars to do something that enhances our downtown or improves public safety, and we're not doing that. It's just a corporate welfare gift. So we're going to have an opportunity. Make your voices heard. Let the city council know that it is not acceptable to be doing these special favors for special people. Instead, we need to be more prudent with our investments, regardless of what pool of money that's coming from. So I hope that you get involved. I hope you're contacting your council members. I will see you tonight. Let's have a great meeting. Keep in touch. Keep fighting this. Keep making your voices heard. And know that I'm going to be backing you up every step of the way. Good luck, and I hope to see you tonight.